Okay.
And then I'm gonna hit record and it's gonna ask you to give me permission to dual record somewhere.
I hit record too, so we are recording. I don't see anything popping up.
Okay.
Does it show recording on your end?
It's a request host to start. No. Request to record. Here we go. Maybe again.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see it
Okay.
now.
Mine says recording.
All right, cool.
Great.
And then I can keep track of time. I know this one she said 80 to 90 minutes, but I feel like we usually hit that anyway.
Yeah, I do have a timer up in the corner. Um, I think I can make that visible to people. Can you see it up at the top?
Uh, I can't.
Mm.
Hmm. Okay. Well,
Like I said, I can keep track of time too.
okay. Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Great. All right, I guess let's just jump in. So we are in gallery mode. And yeah, I mean, honestly, just like how folks are doing, how I feel like it's been 3 weeks, if not more, since the last time we connected. You've been doing some traveling. I did some traveling. Um,
Yeah, how was your trip?
it was good. You know, my wife did a half marathon in Vancouver. And then we stopped over in Victoria, which was really great. And then this week she had a surgery on her hand, like a pretty major surgery. So things have been really kind of crazy.
Mm.
Um, but good, you know, it's like a pause. I'm feeling like it's the end of the term. Like I'm feeling like I'm looking forward to the next 4 weeks, having a
Yeah,
little break
finally
from
our summer.
classwork. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
How did your wife do in the marathon?
I think there were like 10,000 entries, and she came in let's see, there were 36 people after her. So she came in like 9,900 and something, but she did great.
Oh,
You know, she hasn't done like one of those in a decade. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just like an accomplishment getting it done. I for sure didn't do it. So she
right?
wins over me, you know?
I agree. I think that it takes a lot. It takes a lot of prep work and a lot of like discipline to get to that. So just
Mhm.
Mhm.
finishing is a huge thing.
Did you guys have to travel pretty far for that?
That was in Vancouver. So Vancouver, BC. So up in Canada, that's where it was. And we drove. So it
Oh,
was a,
nice.
yeah, it was a nice, I mean, it was during those, I don't know where you all, I don't remember where you all are at, but it was during the fire, like the smoke. So
Hmm.
there was like smoke, um, headed that way, but it did end up clearing up.
Nice.
Yeah. So how were your travels, Delaney?
Oh, pretty good. I went to Vegas.
Okay.
Went to a couple concerts, a couple shows. Just
Nice.
kind of made the most out of it, but then I had to come back for work, and that's been a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I got in a little escape, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Well, tell us what you've been up to, Chris.
I have a 1 month old and a 16-month old, so I've kind of just been like surviving the
Yes.
experience, I would say.
Wow.
No traveling here.
I
But
realized you had two
yeah,
under two.
yeah,
Yeah,
two
two
under
under
two.
two.
So
That's
yeah.
impressive.
Wow.
So it's going. It's
Yeah.
going. So
That's cool. I saw your video about your book, so I thought that was like, yeah, you're like, I'll be coming back to this book for 10 years.
yeah, at least, because like with the context of the book, a lot of it is like understanding the other perspective and their feelings, but like communication right now is like very minimal that I they could reciprocate. So when I'm like trying to explain something, I don't know how much is actually getting through, but
I think babies understand
I'm hoping.
a lot more than what we probably assume.
I studied
Cool.
psychology, and I remember once we learned in class that even just like the amount you hold your baby when they're younger can affect them when they're older. Like it's stuff like that that you don't even grasp means something, but it really does.
Yeah, for sure. I believe that too. I mean, just anecdotally, you
Yeah.
know, I've I believe that. Cool. Well, it looks like, do we have any new norms before is there a new norm that we need? Like to jazz up?
I feel pretty good,
Hoping too.
Yeah, cool. I didn't really have anything either. I was like, I think we're doing pretty good as a team.
right?
So I wasn't thinking that we needed anything else. Cool. So, Chris, looks like you got I think, oh yeah, speaking of norms, I talk a lot, so I'm gonna try and pace my airtime.
Mhm.
But maybe we can, yeah, I don't know, alternate questions or something.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
Do you want to go next, Chris?
Yeah, I could just start it off there. Question four. His name, my name is Chris, yes. Established. Are you taking classes next term? If so, what are you taking? Or let us know if you're graduating. And this is one of your last classes. Well, I was scheduled for classes, but I'm thinking about reaching out to the registrar and deferring a term, since I'm returning to work. And with the kids, I haven't really been able to dive into this the way that I really wanted to, that I have been in previous terms. So I kind of want to break.
Mhm.
And we're thinking about moving here. We're looking at closing on a house in Vancouver, Washington. So I think dealing with all that and trying to force this in wouldn't be a good idea. So that's my plan for next term.
Well,
So
congratulations. Closing on a house is cool.
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah.
In Vancouver too? That sounds bougie.
Yeah, uh, it's not downtown or anything. It's out in the like the rural area, so it's not like super super fancy, but it'll be different than Salem here.
Yeah.
Nice. What about you, Delaney?
I am going to be taking classes next term. It's my last year of the master's program, so I only have 3 terms left. I'm taking Criminal Justice 660, which is advanced criminology, and then Criminal Justice 623, which is criminal justice research. So basically, the whole year, I'm just going to be working on my exit project, my paper.
Mm, yeah. Do you work full time too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a
But
lot.
luckily, when I get free time at work, they let me do homework and stuff like that. But like
Nice.
recently, we've just been swamped, so I haven't had much time.
Yeah, that's nice though. That sounds like a nice perk to have.
Right. I'm
Yeah,
hoping spring and fall will slow down a little
we'll
bit, but
slow down. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also, Chris, have been considering pausing a term. At the end of this term, I'll be exactly halfway through the program, through the OL program. And yeah, it's been over 10 years since I was in school last. I work full time. My wife just had surgery. There's just like work is really crazy. So I was thinking about it and I haven't quite decided yet. I just feel pretty taxed. And at the same time, the idea of like prolonging kind of completion doesn't sound appealing to me either. So I'm back and forth on the idea of pausing, but I did I did register for classes. So I registered for critical thinking for leaders and talent management. So in both like in the OL program and um it looks like one of them might be hybrid. So that would mean going down to Salem from Portland once a week, which um I did last term or 2 terms ago, which wasn't too bad. But yeah, um
That's like an hour and a half drive.
I live in Gresham, so it's like an hour and 15 minutes, which honestly wasn't too bad. And I work from home, so it was kind of like a nice reprieve to just
Mhm.
like put myself out, out there and be around people.
I lived in Gresham for 2 years.
Yeah, nice. Are you down in Salem area now?
No, I'm in Pendleton. It's like Eastern Oregon. Oh,
Okay, nice.
yeah.
Cool.
You guys feel good about that one?
I think so.
Okay. Discuss the music and lyrics report. Do a shout out for someone's video or song choice that you appreciated. What did you notice about the assignment? And then turn towards interpersonal conflict. I would say the song that stuck out to me was Born This Way by Lady Gaga,
Mhm,
just because I feel like it stood out to me because I love that song, like grew up listening to it and stuff. But I also feel like in connecting it to interpersonal conflict, like it's kind of what the whole song's about. Like
mhm,
rethinking who you are as a person because of society, but also because of just what feels right and what feels wrong.
mhm.
Um, which I feel like can reflect that conflict within yourself a bunch.
That is actually also the song that stood out to me. I love that Angelica did it, and I also loved that she did it with a Spanish subtitle. Like, so that was cool and interesting to me because I hadn't seen it that way
Mhm.
before. Um, but yeah, because she did it that way in the video, it wasn't like the official video, but it was like, I I think really spoke to kind of the message, like the video spoke to the message of the song. Um, I found that interesting, but uh, kind of the same. I mean, I found that it kind of touched on both, like it's talking about interpersonal conflict and being judged, and also kind of talking about like um just resisting the pressures of just like different societal norms or different like larger judgments that we have about being different. And so I definitely feel like that one stood out to me the most. It was also maybe one of the more catchy ones in
Yeah.
the assignment, so that helped.
I liked yours, G. Uh, it was a genre that I wouldn't have been exposed to outside of the class, so I
Hmm.
just thought that was interesting. I really like the part you brought up about the self face and how she was kind of just like taking control of her identity back from whoever the opposing was. I can't remember if there was a name involved or not, but it was pretty detailed in that way. And there was a lot of like there was a lot to the message. It wasn't like the song I chose didn't have a lot of content in it, but yours had like multiple layers, and I thought it like brought the whole thing out really well.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I wasn't expecting it to be my favorite assignment so far. So, um, yeah, I was kind of surprised, and I think is the only thing that I turned in early.
Mhm.
There.
I also thought Mr. Brightside was a good one. Like
Yeah,
so
classic,
in
Chris.
terms of like
It's a
conflict and stuff like that. Yeah.
I like the second I read the prompt for the assignment, that's just what popped into my head. And then when I was reading the lyrics, I was like, there isn't, it repeats a lot. There isn't like too much depth into it, and it's all from one side, as opposed to like yours brought out like read receipts almost. And but it was good. I think, like in a simple way to be able to just,
Well, and I feel like that really represents interpersonal conflict as well, where like you said, it is kind of one-sided and he's just fighting with his own demons almost.
Hmm. I mean, I think there could be lots of layers to that. I think that I don't know who said, but like within us is multitudes, right? Like I think like within each other, like within ourselves, like there are many different people, there are many different versions, and how I show up, and I think it touches a little bit on some of our class in terms of um, just like situational, and relational conditions. But I feel like even something as simple as just like having it be one-sided, there could be lots of layers to kind of uncover. It doesn't have, something simple could be like more complex than so I thought it was a good one. I was like, yeah, it also just brought back good memories. All right. Anything else to cover on that one?
No, I do want to say though, since because I was in charge of the opening ticket, but there wasn't one, I did do an icebreaker for the next one.
That's cool. Yeah, so why don't you do that and then I'll do the next one.
Okay. So since we're like in a conflict class and whatever, I was just gonna ask you guys like what's your biggest pet peeve?
oh, geez. When it comes to conflict, trying to constantly redirect instead of answering a question, probably, or like if I ask a very direct thing and then we start like skirting the answer, I'm not talking about like trap questions, obviously, uh, but I guess Congress is like a great example of this. If you ever watch like them question anybody and then they give like a complete antidote when it was a yes or no question kind of thing, I think that is my pet peeve when it comes to conflict.
That's such a good example, Chris.
Uh-huh. I have a coworker and I always tell her like give me a definitive answer because she's always like, sure, maybe, I don't know, or like one and I'm just like, no, it's like a yes or no question.
Mm. I think um yeah, I'm thinking of a previous coworker and colleague that I had, and I think generally the pet peeve I have is when folks really don't have the like emotional intelligence, and I think this kind of relates to some face work too, of just admitting when they're wrong. I think it just speaks volumes about a person to kind of own something. I think so it's respectful to the relationship. It shows kind of a desire to reconcile, to repair, and it's just a really solid olive branch to kind of start that process. And when people are, you know, maybe really resistant to it, maybe for different reasons, maybe for identity threat, like, not really uh, feeling secure in oneself, um, and to make space for others in their interpretations of seeing you in a vulnerable place of like being wrong. I think that is a pet peeve, and I can get impatient when particularly there are leaders in higher positions that don't have the skill to do that, or I don't even know if I feel like it is a skill, but it also feels some like a character, personality trait. But I'm sure Professor Sheldrick would say it's more about um less about that. But anyways, that's what I would say. That's a good question.
I would say like I think about like my family, like we tend to like get into these conflicts and then wake up the next morning and act like it never happened.
Mm.
because truly because they can't admit they were wrong or they just don't know how to approach it. So I would agree with that answer.
Nice. That actually reminds me of my family too. It, it, not the end part of like admitting when you're wrong, but um, normalizing being in conflict. Like my family fought a lot, but as
Mhm.
soon as like as much as we escalated something, we were very easy to de-escalate. So it kind of it made it feel safe for me to be in conflict with people.
Mhm.
But it felt like, but I noticed kind of as I just had different experiences that, some people get to conflict and then it's like, ooh, that's it. It's over.
I think just not being able to identify it, kind of like what you're saying, if everybody just pretends like it's okay, Delaney, the next day.
Mhm.
You can't like work on the repair or like the reconciliation aspect if you can't even identify like the conflict existed.
Right.
So,
And I think that's like what we talked about, like it's consequence of avoidance is like it kind of just builds up and builds up because there is no repair.
Yeah, that was a good one. Um, all right, if we're good, we can move on to the next question. Yeah? Okay. So share something about the conflict mapping assignment that you discovered or that stood out to you. How did zooming out impact your understanding of conflict? And note that this was like a very big assignment. It was a big assignment. And it will be impossible to share everything you worked on in the time frame of the meeting. So I guess what are the things that stood out?
You can go ahead, Chris.
uh, I guess like one of the big impacts, I'll just focus on like the two main characters. Uh, or I gotta look at their names. It's been a couple weeks here. So I did League of Their Own. So Dottie and Kit, were the two siblings. Besides Tom Hanks's character, they were the main focus, and their conflict kind of came to a head like halfway through, I would say, and they used the wrong tools. One of them took the Dottie took the avoidance, and then Kit took the like competing, which caused a lose-lose, and it caused a withdrawal, like a almost a permanent severance that didn't get rectified until like the epilogue, where it was years and years later. Because they never addressed kind of like what we're discussing about with avoidance. They never discussed their their issues, and so they never came back to do the repair or anything like that. And then when it came to them moving geographically apart, because they didn't do any of the framework in order to kind of repair it beforehand or like try to reconcile or forgive, it just permanently strained the relationship. Uh, so that was one of the main ones that I took. And then the other main aspect, I guess, is just how the dynamics will change as people work together, because they could start as more adversarial, and then how they deal with conflict, it brings them closer together.
Nice. That was also the movie that I did. I love that movie. I would say what kind of stood out to me, I think you're right, Chris, like, the Dottie and Kit kind of back and forth conflict. That was, I think growing up, but that was always kind of the thing that stood out to me the most. That like that's the most visible, particularly like as a younger person looking at it, like you're like, oh, sibling stuff, that makes sense. I'm always fighting with my siblings.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the assignment in general really helped me think about all the other things that were happening. Like, just like the Lowenstein and like, Mr. Harvey. I don't know if you've watched this, Delaney. Have you seen this movie?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like that whole thing, kind of like there were layers around that were like gendered and also just kind of like the external kind of societal pressures of like, you know, I remember, I think Harvey saying something like, "What do you think the men should go back to the kitchen?" Like, so there was like an exchange like that felt like, oh yeah. Um, and I think when we had the round table the last time, I think I was kind of really interested in like Jimmy's like evolution. Like he had conflict with Harvey, even though it was not like centered really, but there was like, identity stuff that he was working through with being kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
um and and just like who he used to be. So there was kind of like that was happening that then impacted things. It was just like a lot of the other aspects. Um, and then a very short clip that I think now in kind of my understanding around different things, which was just like, when the black woman picked up the ball and like threw it to Dottie, or no, threw it to like one of the other players and like, I mean, it was just maybe like 10 seconds, if that. But I felt like that really felt like, oh yeah, there's all these other things that are happening in and around the Dottie like kick conflict that don't feel obvious, but I think impacted like their situation too. So it was just kind of like, oh yeah, there's a lot of other things that are happening here that I didn't see, ever or didn't really focus on. So I appreciated that kind of dive into that.
Do you think you saw those things now because of like this course or because of just watching it now at a different age?
No, I watched it not that long ago, like a couple years ago, you know. Um, I think a lot of it is because of the course. That like, yeah, I think that those things felt, yeah, more substantial. Like, I mean, I feel like the piece about the black woman throwing the ball, like that felt evident. Like, they emphasized that on purpose, but it just didn't. So yes, I noticed that, but I don't know that I connected like that as a system of things
Mm-hmm.
surrounding the conflict.
Mm-hmm. I watched 42, which is about Jackie Robinson.
Hmm.
I had never watched it before, so it was really good. I would recommend if you guys have not seen it.
I haven't.
I would say one thing that like really stood out to me making the conflict map was like I didn't even know where to begin because obviously it's about Jackie Robinson, but it's also majorly about baseball, racism, family. Like there's so many different aspects to it, and a lot of them have conflict as well. Uh, Obviously segregation, Jim Crow laws, that's a huge conflict. Big reason like he was the first black baseball player, so that caused a lot of issues. And then also within himself, like being an athlete is hard, having to perform and work your way up to the top like that, especially coming from um his place in society. And then like the very beginning is them getting back from the war. And so there's just all these different aspects of it that played a part. Like I honestly didn't even know where like who to put in the middle. Like is it Jackie Robinson? Is it baseball? Because there were so many different things. And then like it included everything. Like he has a kid in the movie, gets married, like family dynamics, team dynamics, organizational with baseball in general, and then yeah, like societal norms and how they played into that then. So I honestly think it was a great movie for this assignment. And I had a lot of fun making the conflict map because there were so many different things to include.
Yeah, that's cool. I will put that on my list because I also just appreciated how Sheldrick had so many baseball movies.
Yeah. And then I think about it too, like when I was watching it, I obviously knew I was doing it for this assignment. So like I was taking notes and stuff to include while I was watching it. And I think it made me think of it differently too, kind of how you were speaking about A League of Their Own.
I think you're up next then, Delaney.
Or I think it's Chris's turn.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
me.
okay.
Week 6, share a point from the module that stood out to you and positively impacted your understanding of the power of nonviolence. So the line itself was nonviolence is not passive. Was something that stood out to me. Because you think of violence as being like this coercive action, and if you're going to be nonviolent, that you're kind of just more passively standing by. But there's a lot of things that, like tools you could use in that aspect of it. Um, One specific part of the component was you build bridges. So if like the other side is a lot stronger, like the institutional power is stronger than you kind of just like mend bridges that you have with people that you might have conflict with, but like the overarching goal is like the same. So it kind of like cascades into doing some repair on that end, and then you get people that are on the opposing side that when they hear the differing information, it kind of like they could switch sides as well, and just like navigating through it that way, I thought was pretty interesting. But just overall, the statement that it's not passive, like there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. It's just not necessarily confrontational, like the same way that you would see otherwise. So,
Yeah, that really also relates, like I can relate to that. I think in my work, I'm an HR director. I sit in a position in my organization where I can see a lot of different things, and I feel like kind of outside looking in, I can see it with a different lens than people doing the work or in it. So I think it gives me an interesting perspective. And I have shared like or just noticed like there's a lot that someone can say without saying it. So there's just a lot of weight that can be carried in the negative space. So when we don't say something, maybe when something is expected to be said or should be said or addressed, the silence can really speak volumes. And so I think that kind of ties into, you know, the passivity and um, it just makes me think about that.
The point that I wrote down was regulation does not require emotional silence. The book I read this term was basically just kind of trying to get people in tune with their emotions and what they really mean. So I feel like that stood out to me because it was relatable to that, but also a lot of what we've spoken at in this class about just like not only expressing your emotions in a way that's like communicative, but also understanding what that means to you as well. And obviously we've talked about avoidance and all of that too. So it was stood out to me like emotional silence does actually it doesn't require it's not required at all in order to find a resolution or to make room for other people. Like you are allowed to feel what you want to feel.
Yeah. The thing that stood out, I mean, it was just kind of like a reframe of power, like just the again, kind of like my lens is through like I read the rule makers, rule breakers, so it can be about, authority, different titles and I think hierarchy kind of comes to mind, right? So I think with power, like there's some in like we assign some inherent authority along with like specific titles and things like that. So it was just really like a reminder and a connection that like power sits in other places too. Like it doesn't necessarily just, belong to the titles. Like there's there's a lot of power in like the silent leader who gets people to kind of really rally behind something and shows leadership by just being a exemplar and being a model. And that person may have a lot of influence because because they have just earned a lot of followers. And so I think that can yield power, right? Like influence yields power. And so I think just like the idea of just like a simple reframe of power and a reminder that it can sit in other places was something that kind of stood out to me and wasn't as center as the nonviolence piece, but yeah, felt like a good takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like power that could be just drawn from like competency. So if you're like a new manager or something, you come in and just try to throw the institutional authority around, but there's a bunch of people that are more proficient in the roles that you're guiding if they're not gonna really subscribe to that.
Yeah. What else did I write down? That's really it. We covered everything. Okay, I think I got the next one, which is week 7. So, which video or podcasts stood out to you and explain why?
The video I watched was the 3 steps to getting what you want in negotiation. The 3 steps were do your research, which is like asking yourself, what do you want to do? What is like the possibilities to come out of this? To prepare mentally, kind of like your emotions, um, like be able to distance yourself and know like it's not your measure of your worth, the negotiation. And then 3, put yourself in their shoes. Um, she said something like be ambitious, but also show that you care for others. And I feel like that kind of stuck with me because I really tend to just emphasize number 3 and just think about other people when in reality, like this first step was to like, what do you want out of this? So I think that was a big takeaway for me was that video because of that.
What about you, Chris?
So the video I watched was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Hmm.
And I chose that because most of the other discussions about negotiation was like somewhat give and take or just like kind of outline where you want to go, where both sides are mutually agree. But the premise of Chris was that he was a like a hostage negotiator, so like there are situations where you just can't split the difference. You can't give in to any demands of the other or the opposing side. So it was discussing a lot about like boundaries and how you connect with even like the person that you perceive as like the most evil or wicked. They fall under 3 categories: mad, sad, and bad. And you you get there by discussing their perspectives and learning about their values and interests, and then you kind of regurgitate their standpoints to them until you build a rapport with them, and then you like validate their experience, but then that's when you bring in your boundaries of like what your expectations are. And there's success in business, interpersonal relationships as well, because sometimes it is just like allowing the other party to vent uh,
Mm-hmm.
without like going in and arguing your side, but kind of just like disarming them through that type of thing. And then when they feel like it's like weaponizing, he called it weaponized empathy. So you're empathetic and you validate, but then after you receive their position, then you push yours. And then a lot of times there's like success in that side of it. And Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy kind of describes that as well, because in her approach that there's 2 sides to every conflict due to like the individual perception of what's going on. And a lot of it is just affirming the other side, um, and then setting the boundaries of what your expectations are of what's gonna happen. But it's like you're not gonna budge. If a kid wants to run to the middle of the street, for example, like you're gonna tell them that they're okay with being upset, those emotions are valid, but like what are we gonna do in the meantime? So
I feel like that was like kind of like the opposite of what I said. Like,
I think it's situational based, right? Like you
yeah,
don't need to be a heavy hitter all the time. Like their negotiation, the way that you're doing, that it's like deliberate for a purpose is just as important as um, the other type of negotiation, I guess.
Yeah.
Remind me, what did you said? You said emotional validation. Is that the term you?
Yeah, just validation in general, but since I was
Yeah.
talking about like the empathy, it's just an emotional
Oh,
validation. But it's validating their perception, their interests, and their values. So,
you said maybe it was empathy. What was it, the phrase that you used? Sorry,
the weaponized empathy.
weaponized empathy. Yeah, so like that actually made me think of your pet peeve, Chris. Like I'm curious, like it's not exactly like you know, a direct kind of mirror of that, but I kind of see some connection to um his approach to kind of like validating, but then like being firm in his boundary or being firm in that. I mean, I think, when if you think about how the other person might feel like experiencing someone validate and then kind of like pivot, I'm curious if when you have experienced someone like not answering the question, like not answering the direct question that you've given, so it's like a sidestep. Like, is that, I don't know, I'm wondering if there's like similar feelings, you know. Does
I
that make
think,
sense? My
yeah, I think the context of what I was saying my pet peeve is if the answer is clear or it's just like direct. Like it's
Okay,
like if you're talking to like a subordinate that was supposed to give you something by like close of business and they didn't, well, did you finish it or not kind of thing. And then
gotcha,
they start giving you like a
gotcha.
story
Hmm.
about um instead of just saying answering and then waiting for the reciprocate following. Because like always the following question is like, did you do something? No. Okay, let's discuss why you didn't do it. But
Hmm.
just immediately going into like reframing or deflecting or that's the type of thing that
Yeah, that helps. So, yeah, I can see that. Um, Delaney, I think that we have like we're on a roll. That is also the video that the three steps to getting what you want in negotiation was always the it was also the one that I chose to. Um, and for me, I think what kind of stood out was just also like the emotional preparation, but really more about how like just like I talked about this somewhere else too, just like how thinking about how someone might respond to like a position that you have in the negotiation, like and kind of or anticipating, just I guess preparing for the various ways in which someone can respond in a negotiation and like thinking through that. Because I think sometimes negotiation happens really like in on the spot, right? So like we sometimes don't. I mean, it's a skill to be able to kind of slow down, like internally to kind of process,
Hmm.
to understand like what's happening. And so I think doing that kind of work ahead of time seems really helpful to be able to manage in the moment. So I feel like that was a thing that I kind of thought about while watching that. I mean, there was a lot of really good tips in that video, but that was one of the things that felt that stood out to me. And also just I think I spoke about this in a different assignment, but just that kind of process of thinking about something and just like preparation in general is regulation, you know, it helps ground you. Um, you know, um, and I think just helps you like move away from like the fight or flight, I guess is yeah.
Yeah. Which I feel like people say like it's a bad thing to like anticipate that or like think worst case scenario, like what if this happens? Because rarely does it ever happen, but like in those situations, yeah, where it could be anticipated I'm going to.
Yeah, I know it does kind of have, what is that called? Some type of thinking. I don't remember. Dooming, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like just
Boom.
doom.
Yeah.
General doom.
Okay, you guys
Uh,
feel good about that one?
I think so. I'm just doing a little time check. It looks like we're just shy of 50 minutes.
Okay.
So I think what's the minimum? 80? Is that what we need for today?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we'll hit
Yeah.
it for sure.
Okay.
What is the role of face work towards negotiating a resolution? Team, is resolution possible without face work?
So,
Um, I wrote down like the face negotiation theory, like the self face, other face, mutual face, how that can be all used towards negotiating a resolution. It just kind of depends on what you pick, or like how, what did you say earlier? It's like scenario based, situation based.
yeah, I think it depends on what you're negotiating because there are times where you want to get them to lose face, essentially to get them off guard or like take a more advantageous position. But then if it's somebody that you want like a long-term relationship with and you want it to be like a positive, like it's more collaborative a form of negotiation, I would say. You definitely want to do face saving and face maintenance and like that type of thing, where
Mm,
you're kind of building, you're keeping each other, I guess baseline is the word I'm looking for.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I mean, just face work in general feels like, you know, if there is any hope for some sort of resolution, like it's just the vehicle, it's like the means to the end. So it feels, it's pivotal if those are the things that if you have interest in that. So I think that's like um I just really I liked that module a lot. So um yeah, that's kind of what stood out to me. I think too, like there was kind of this just I thing that stood out too, where it's not the same as accountability, right? Like face work can kind of create openings for resolution and repair, but it's not quite the same as being held accountable. Um, and so there is like that distinction there. Um, but it again, I think kind of what I was mentioning earlier allows kind of the olive branch to be put out.
Yeah. That's what like the is resolution possible without Facebook? I don't or face work. I don't think it would be
No, nothing
because
like meaningful, like,
Yeah, I think that's the key, the meaningful
yeah,
piece. But if it's not meaningful, I mean, like I was talking about earlier, like the hierarchy, right? Like, I mean, my boss might come in and say, like, Gloria, I need this done by Friday. And like, I gotta do it. Like, I don't, like, so like it just might be imposed on me. And in a specific relationship, in a specific, that might just be what it is. Now, would I probably appreciate maybe more advance notice or maybe to be able to negotiate a different deadline or but I think what you touched on, I think the key piece though, Chris, is like meaningful. Like if it's meaningful, then I think you're right, Delaney. I don't think it can. But if it's not meaningful, then there is a resolution. This is what it is.
yeah. It just might not be conducive to like fostering a relationship with whatever entity or individual beyond that resolution. It might cause like a permanent withdrawal afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That could be the resolution. I mean, that is an end result, so
Yep. Yeah.
I also think managing your identity needs to be done for yourself too, not only just for the other person, but for like, you have to put on a face for your boss, but you also need to make sure you're managing how you feel and everything like that as well.
yeah.
Yeah, what do they say? Put the mask on first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of my example earlier with my past colleague, who I mean, I think you could probably say, or I would be curious about his the identity work that he's done, right? Because there isn't kind of the willingness to admit when he's wrong, but like there's so much value to yourself to
Hmm.
be able to kind of reconcile that inner work.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of to me, well, I get curious about like, well, maybe that's not done at all. I don't want to make assumptions, but it makes me like, curious about it because I feel like when people, in my experience, when people have done that kind of identity work, um, they do end up showing up differently in conflict because they're more secure. That makes sense.
Yeah. Better resolution.
Hmm.
Okay.
Ready for the
Yeah.
next? Okay. Week 8. There were many iconic and famous quotes. Share one quote and its source in your own words. Share a video or podcast, in fact, your understanding from this week's materials. Um, I have written down. So, uh, time doesn't heal. It's what you do with time. Edith Eva Edgar. And the reason why I chose that quote, um, it's just because I've thought about times in my life where like I have had like a huge falling out with somebody, and then it's just like one of those things that if it's resentment that lasts for a long time, uh, the best way that I've gotten through it was kind of just like reflecting on it and then taking the accountability of my portions of it, because it's not just one-sided, and forgiving myself and then forgiving the other person, uh, and then even though there's like probably not reconciliation at that point, but it just allows you to just allow like past is the past, and then you get to move on from it. Uh, so the video aspects um was a second chance. It was by storyboard. Uh, so someone robbed a bank and went to prison for 5 years, and then when he got out, he went back to the people that were in the bank that day and apologized to them. And one person specifically that was there kind of just like started a mentoring role with him and kind of discussed how it made them feel and then just separated the individual's behavior from him as a person kind of deal and kind of just, yeah, like discussed the impacts on other people, but also like what it means for yourself. Like you're not fundamentally bad as a human being. Like you made a bad choice, and then you still have all this ability to recover from that. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Nice.
Yeah.
I had a Mandela quote. It was the resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it kills your enemies. Um, which is a cool quote. Um, and I think is just kind of points out like the ridiculousness of that thought of like, but um, I think for me, like the quote is kind of just touching on like it's okay to be angry. Like anger is like it's useful and we don't need to like shoo it away. And I think it's just kind of like talking about, it's a choice. there's agency and choosing to like just connect with the resentment and just have that be centered and not kind of looking to like the other things that can come up from the anger. Like, what are other lessons to kind of be learned? Like, you know, there's more, like, it's like they're only having a relationship with the resentment. Like, that, if it's relational, like, that's what they're choosing to kind of focus on. Um, so that was like, something I thought about when reading that. I also have been kind of like I just finished um House of Dragons.
Oh, I just
No
started.
spoilers, no spoilers, but
Yeah,
like
don't.
um
On episode 4.
but yeah, House of Dragon, but it made me start thinking about like Game of Thrones and like um just all the, you know, there's a ton of poison in the show.
I think
Um
especially House of Dragon. The resentment is
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So yeah, I felt like that kind of stood out. And then for the media, I liked the gosh, I'm gonna butcher this name, the Kintsugi. So just like yeah, like just kind of like thinking about like how repair kind of changes things and your relationship to something after it's broken can kind of create a new. So I think there's a connection there between like the Mandela quote and that video. So that's kind of why that one stood out to me, but also just like I mean more poetic I suppose, but just like the beauty and brokenness. Like we don't have to kind of be polished all of the time, and um there's a lot of vulnerability in kind of expressing that, which I think is another form of um reconciliation, again, kind of I feel like my theme here is like creating space to kind of do that and the ways in which we can do that. So I think just showing up broken, um, if that's how you are today, you know, or how something is, like I think that there's just a lot of um possibilities in that.
Yeah, I would agree, G. I also did Time Doesn't Heal, It's What You Do with Time. I think people always say like I even have repeatedly said time heals all wounds. But like the quote says, it's not really the time itself, it's what you do with that. And I thought it like similar to Chris, like I thought back of like moments where like I was devastated and I thought that feeling would never go away. And now I look back and I'm like, you know, like that was really devastating and a big part of my life, but it also is what makes me who I am now. So, like, I think that quote really stuck with me. The media I picked was the best advice Dr. Maya Angelou has ever given. She was like sitting with like Oprah and she just interviewed her. And I think it also goes with the quote. She says like forgive it, just move on. She says she gives her son like advice to have like space in you to know like when to say no and like choose yourself almost in certain circumstances. Like I think that was stuck out to me a lot because I tend to not do that. And so her saying like make sure you like, and she made it like physical too, like make sure you have a space in you that absolutely no one can invade and like be able to set boundaries around that space. And so I thought that was pretty beautiful.
It's really hard to do, right? So I feel like, particularly as being like socialized as women, I think there's a lot of unspoken kind of pressure. So for anybody though, like it's a hard thing to do. So I I I appreciate that too. It's a good message.
Yeah. Is it my turn?
I think so.
Okay, discuss my response to your team's question. Include at least one other question from another team. This is meant to be a dialogue. My responses are not fixed answers. Join in. Which other team's video did you decide to watch? Um, from like her response to our questions specifically, like she really loved your question, G, which I thought was awesome. Yeah, she went into like all the organizational factors in it and institutional powers, and I feel like she really gave an in-depth answer to what you were asking, like all the clarity in the world. So
Yeah.
I thought that was nice. And then kind of what she said to like Chris's answer, it kind of seemed like what we already talked about. I wrote down one thing that she said that stuck out to me was that not every conflict is a project. So,
Mm,
like not obviously you don't have to go in thinking like, oh, this needs to be done right now. There's a deadline to everything. So, um, she said like avoiding is different from pausing. So I feel like looking at it in that way. And then for my answer for my question, I feel like I wrote down like honesty that is weaponized. That was one thing that stood out to me. Like I think it was kind of like our theme this Zoom call is like it's very circumstantial and sometimes it can't be resolved because it shouldn't be. It's used as a weapon rather than something that like repair and all those things that should come out of conflict instead. And then the other video, she mentioned in our video the question about the cultural what was it? Um how do you handle conflicts that arise from cultural differences? So then I went and found the video with that one in it. And that question she actually couldn't find an answer to. She said that she was stumped. So I thought that was funny, the one question that I interested in got stumped, but obviously a good question, obviously important.
what about you, Chris?
So for your question specifically, I think one of the most interesting, uh, I guess, tools she stated was if you're worried about like someone avoiding giving you the an honest answer due to your title, uh, that I don't know if she meant it directly or not, or if I was just interpreting it, reading through the lines, but the way that you could disseminate the information is if it's not like the if you're a manager and like it's a supervisor and it's like a one-to-one, like that would be a lot harder. But if it's for people that are like on the like two levels below or even three levels below, you could ask the question through them so they don't necessarily know it's coming from you. So you don't have to, they don't have to have the fear of like the repercussion that it's coming from you. And it's a way to like solicit information more authentically, especially if you're worried about somebody that's like very focused on the power dynamic.
Yeah.
For my question, I think she did a really good job just answering that it's very like circumstantial, avoiding the primary takeaway I took from that was like if you're overly avoiding or you're using avoiding to like get the long-term success, it's most likely just a sign that the relationship isn't going to last very long, regardless of what type of relationship it is, that it's like it's not very tenable. And then my biggest takeaway from the conflict unresolvable was like if they're just too entrenched to have a real dialogue with you because they're just like focused on their prepared points, like you were saying, Delaney, that it probably is the time to withdraw at that point because it's not going to be resolved since they're not willing to listen to new input or your perspective. So,
Yeah.
um, for the other one, I it's from the group Fantastic Four, and it's how should leaders balance transparency about team conflict with maintaining credibility and trust in their leadership. This is something that like personally resonates with me because that's a hard balance to do, like in a professional like setting. So I was curious to see what the answer for that was, and essentially, it's just setting up boundaries to like clearly define that, like, yes, uh, I need to be transparent with you, but also I have a duty to whatever organization to not disseminate like information that's sensitive. So it's just like you got to really set the boundary, balancing the line, and kind of just telling whoever that as soon as like you're able to give out the information that you will, but you're giving as much as you can, kind of thing. But that's always like a hard balance because like credibility is a huge aspect of that. Because if they see you as disingenuous, like it's really hard to recover from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of gold nuggets in her response to my question. And I mean, it's a real thing that I grapple with. I think I see myself as someone who um, tries to make space for other people. And, you know, um, it's not always the easiest thing to do in terms of, you know, creating the circumstances in which like you can kind of relinquish. So I think one of the things is just like, yeah, giving away some of you know, the like control to another person or party, like parts of the process. Like I think for me, sometimes it's, it's a domino effect. There are other things that it can impact. So part of that is like, yeah, like relinquishing that control, but also being the person who's ultimately kind of held accountable. It just kind of can be challenging to navigate that. So there was tons of good nuggets in there, but I mean, you know, what landed the most is just like the insight that giving somebody like voice is not the same thing as allowing them to have the impact, and the influence over something, because that's not collaboration. That's like, the consulting, like that's you're opening up space for a consultation. So I think that's was really a good takeaway. But there's also a lot of things that are needed in that like authority role. And um yeah, so I mean, despite the good nuggets, I still feel like it's hard to do. It's hard to kind of like know when to give away the power, not like, be able to you know manage dominant voices or people that process differently, maybe faster than others, like how to, it's just a lot to kind of own. And I think that's part of what comes with leadership. And I'm associating leadership in this way with like the hierarchical like titles. Um, but yeah, I think it just there's a lot to do there, but really solid, solid responses to that. And yeah, I think um in terms of the avoiding the lose-lose, I was just thinking about the yeah, how like the avoidance collaboration, like the TKI model kind of came up for me. So just like, the avoidance doesn't necessarily mean that like the conflict isn't something that can be acknowledged or managed, right? Like we can still move through that. Um, so that was that was what stood out to me with that. And then um yeah, I think that was it.
Perfect. Back to the Godfather. Was this when you or Chris?
Uh,
There we go.
it might be me. I'll just do it. The Godfather opening scene. Rewatch this scene from the first roundtable as the team discussed the following points. What new things stands out to you this time around? Compare how do the Godfather and Boston era think about forgiveness and reconciliation? How does uh, face work play into this scene? What are the different roles of the third party involvement? What does the scene tell us about the inequities of being a first generation American?
Should we just take turns answering the question?
Sure. Um, what new things stand out this time around? Definitely like this kind of goes into like the face work question. But just the Godfather's like he's explaining to him that he is offending him because of like his implicit bias of who he is kind of deal. But he's doing everything that he can to like give the other guy like a chance to rectify that in the conversation instead of just like taking the offense and then immediately trying to slide him back and take face away from him. He's like really focusing on kind of balancing it and maintaining his own identity, obviously, but not taking too much away from the other person. Um, Now, when it comes to forgiveness and reconciliation, obviously Boston era wants like vindication for uh what he's doing. So he's not really trying to forgive or like move past. Like he wants blood for blood with it. Um and then to tell us about the inequities of being a first generation American, the police or like the judicial system of like the institution wasn't providing him with adequate justice. So going more on the collective uh ideology from earlier in the term. They came from the same area. They have the same cultural identity. So now they're going to work together in order to solve the issue at hand. So
No.
I mean, I think what was obvious for me this second round was that they were negotiating, so kind of just like I said earlier, like how like negotiation can be happening like in a moment, I think that was, he's like basically, will you off this guy? And he's like, no, that's I can't do that. So they're going back, "Yeah, I'll pay you." Like that's like they're negotiating. Um, and so like that was something that kind of was definitely new. I didn't really see that in the last time. Um, and then, in terms of like the face work, I think you're right, Chris. Like there was like vindication that he was looking for. Corleone was, I think, trying to hold on to like his identity. I think his identity was being threatened by like the lack of respect that was being showed, and like, so that was something that kind of stood out to me. Um, and with the conflict specifically, yeah, there isn't reconciliation, but there with like the end result of the people who are causing his daughter harm. But there was kind of like some reconciliation between the two, because he did kind of Bonserra, like he did kind of like give in, right? He called him Godfather, right? So like there was this like kind of resolution to that. So yeah, I thought that was something that stood out. And then, in terms of like, the first gen stuff, I yeah, I mean, I just think that it did feel transactional. It did feel like there was like just a rejection of the system, and it just like what else did I write down here? Oops. Oh yeah, that he was just like, yeah, he trusted in those institutions, and then he just like tried to distance himself, and at the end there was just like, kind of coming into the fold of yeah, I guess a different system, right?
No.
Don Corleone's system, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I think there's just generally a lot of vulnerability too. Um, in a position like that, just like in the first gen experience. Um, So yeah, there's lots of good connections there.
I would say a new thing that stands out to me would be more so tied to the forgiveness and reconciliation because it kind of seems like when we talked about forgiveness in class, like it was kind of like you can forget or you can forgive but don't forget. Like there's you can obviously move on from things, but and you should move on from things, but there are certain things that are just always kind of gonna break that trust and lose that barrier right there.
Mhm.
So I think like with watching this video again, like it seems like they're forgiving each other and reconciling, but in reality, they're just kind of turning it into a whole new thing where it's like, okay, like, but now you owe me, or yeah, I'll help you out with this, but now you have to deal with this whole different situation on your hands. So it kind of made me think like there wasn't really any forgiveness, more so reconciliation, but still both of them kind of just seemed like the opposite of kind of what we talked about in class with that. I would say Facebook plays a huge role in the scene because like they're both managing their identities in the sense of like where they stand in status and like who needs who kind of thing. Um like Montserrat comes in like really just giving his all, like needing all this help, whereas the Godfather kind of stands firm in like who he is and everything like that. So that's where I feel like Facebook plays a role in like the sense of them knowing their places and how that kind of plays out in the situation as well. Um, as a like criminal justice major or I'm getting my master's in it, this whole scene like in the sense of being a first generation American and everything, like kind of makes sense. A lot of what we talk about in criminal justice is how messed up the system is, especially with minorities and these groups of people. So I think it just shows more so social norms and
Mm.
how those can be used against us, especially when it comes to conflict. I feel like that usually ends up causing conflict because we feel like we can walk over all over certain groups of people and do things that we wouldn't typically do just because someone is lesser than or viewed as lesser than at least.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting to kind of look at this scene through that lens. Um, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just looking here, did we cover everything there?
I don't think we really talked about the third party involvement, but in my mind, that would
Oh
be
yeah.
Bonacera's kid, right? Would that be the third party, would you say?
I think so. And then the judicial institution itself too would be a third party
That's what
involved.
I was thinking, but that's a good point too, Delaney. Like it could be that too.
I guess like the kid would kind of be, I mean, that's the whole reason they're having this conversation. So,
Uh-huh.
but
Hmm.
also yeah, like you said, the judicial system. So, yeah, I think we hit it all.
Okay. Just another time check. We're at 1 hour, 21 minutes.
Mhm.
So, I think I got the next one, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. I should be. So everyone, step one, take a turn sharing your top three lists from weeks 6, 7, 8 that impacted your understanding. I think our understanding of what? Just our understanding of those concepts. Is that what you think
I
that?
think maybe just in general.
Yeah. So this can include vocabulary assignments, lectures, videos, podcasts, handouts, and readings. And be sure to note the week it comes in and explain why you chose it and the impact for you. Um, okay, I think, think what stood out for me in six was kind of like the power piece, like the reframe for power, but obviously just like connection to strategic nonviolence. What Chris had mentioned earlier about the line about passivity. I feel like that was something. And I just think it shows that, like, I think the takeaway and the impact is that it has a lot of power. It's disciplined. It takes a lot of discipline to kind of move through situations and be able to kind of hold up nonviolence because you know, it can be disruptive, it's confrontational, like there's just all these elements to it. Um, so I think that was what stood out for me for six. What stood out for me for seven was the negotiation, the face negotiation theory. Um, and I think, it's just again like I the title of one of my earlier assignments was like the problem is not the problem. So I think like that's kind of like it in a nutshell. Um, and yeah, just kind of really being able to understand like what's happening behind the layers. Like, um, and I think that was what stood out for me for seven. And then what stood out for eight was just like, yeah, like the reconciliation. I feel like that's kind of been the theme here. And like what it takes for the reconciliation. Um, Lots of like that internal, like, stuff first. And really just like, repair. Yeah, repair doesn't necessarily mean forgetting. So it's like that Dalai Lama, like, doesn't, we don't have to forget what happens. Um, And yeah, I think those are the things that stood out for me. Um, I guess I didn't actually complete all of that because I didn't write down specifics, but I did
I
what I
think,
can.
yeah,
I
I
think it
think you
was
did
good.
vocabulary and everything. Yeah. Um, I can go. I would say week six was obviously the conflict mapping and learning about the conflict ecosystem. I think it just really like I feel like when people think of conflict, they think of like two people going at it, but in reality, there's so many different things that play a role into conflict and how a person approaches that and how different scenarios, people, organizations all play a part into one little, well, conflict, little or big. From week seven, I really liked just listening to the Stump the Professor. I was super excited for that. And so just learning, seeing her views on it compared to like what we had discussed kind of was just nice to see that comparison. And I feel like I gained a lot from the video specifically to our responses. And then week eight was probably my favorite week in the whole course. I feel like it was a good way to kind of wrap things up too. I think forgiveness is something that some people aren't very good at. Like moving on is hard. But creating the space to do so, like not only for yourself, but just for everyone around you, because it can be pretty detrimental to mental health and relationships in your life that don't even have to do with the conflict itself. So I think that was a big takeaway for me too, was forgiveness and moving forward.
Nice.
Uh, for mine, I also had the conflict map for a lot of the same reasons. I just think that it's like kind of helped me like view conflicts in other areas too, because I was watching the movie Luca yesterday with my son, and it was pretty. I was kind of dissecting how layered the different conflicts were that were happening in the movie, and I don't think I would have like noticed it had I not taken this course, and I
Wait, which
especially did
movie?
that assignment. Luca, it's the one with the fish, the people,
Oh, it's
the
animated
like,
or like,
yeah, it's
yeah.
animated.
Okay.
But there's just like, there's a sibling, or not, there's like a friendship conflict. There is like the main antagonist. There is the overlooming conflict of the village, like disliking them because they think they're monsters, and then the relationship that Luca had with his parents, like in the blocking because they were overprotective kind of thing.
Mm.
Uh, but just like I kind of see, I guess I just view things more in depth now that I just kind of just subliminally took it at face value before the course. So I think that was really important. Um, for week 7, I really like the video that I talked about earlier of never splitting the difference, just because it made me look at it from a completely different point of view. And then for week 8, the whole block about grief as a portion of conflict and feeling those emotions are normal and valid. And like beforehand, I didn't really pay attention to it. I kind of just like, well, this sucks, and then just moved on. But no, just being present with it's really important. So yeah,
That Voss video is also funny, so
yeah.
that helps.
I did the Alice of the Heart, mapping meaningful connection and language of the human experience. She has a really great section of grief on that as well, if you are more interested in learning about that.
Yeah, I do like I actually rented her The Strong Ground book from the library, but then I was just like, how am I can't read this. Like I have too much to do. But I do like her work.
Yeah. All right, you feel good about that one?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Is it my turn?
I
Yeah, I
think
think.
yeah.
Step 2, top 10 class materials compilation. As a group, compile a list of your top 10 class materials. The list should encompass a variety of resources such as videos, articles, books, lectures, and assignments that you found most impactful throughout the course. You can use items from step 1 or others. Make sure to include the week when each material was covered. The objective is to find common ground and reach a consensus on the list.
Hmm.
Immediately, I think, like we just said, we both did conflict map. I feel like we could definitely include that on it.
Agree.
Okay, I'm just gonna start making a list in our
Oh yeah.
uh group chat so we have that for the post. Conflict map was week 6. Do you guys have any other ideas? Forget my.
I think the entire TKI theory from week
Yeah.
4 is crucial.
That's my
Just
list,
as
yeah.
like a basic
Uh,
tool set, I guess is the word I'm thinking of.
yep, that's on my list too. Good job, y'all. Um I had the like high context, low context communication that felt really relevant to me earlier in the term, just as it kind of relates, for me at least, to understanding the different situations. Just knowing, like, again, like in my work, remote work versus non-remote work, it just helped us or helps me interpret like communication differently. Um, and so that felt useful, which is why I thought to add it.
Do you remember what week that was from?
I think it's 2. It was early. Yeah, it's 2.
Okay. I would say like the collectivism, that one, I feel like I've mentioned that multiple times throughout the term. Like that was something that really stuck with me, which I think was also week 2. Mm.
I mean, I'll add another one, just like, again, I was surprised about the music and lyrics assignment. I just felt like, yeah, there was so much there that we can kind of dig into, that like so many things in the course were, I think, able to be integrated into that. So I felt like it just really um talks really, or just addressed like the interpersonal conflict and interpersonal conflict at the same time. Okay.
I would agree. I enjoyed doing that assignment too.
Hmm. So that was 8.
Okay.
I think the metaphor assignment was very important for my learning because I was kind of stumped at first on what I was going to talk about, and then it forced me to like not only correlate but like dive deeper into how to teach the information
Mm-hmm.
from week four. So I
I
mean,
would,
it digs up like the stuff from week one to week four, but it just was on week four.
I mean, are we gonna I feel like we gotta add the face negotiation stuff. The
Yeah,
the face negotiation.
theory.
the saving
Yeah.
face
Hmm.
and
Should I just put face work in general?
face work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just I feel like I just yeah, like I agree, Delaney. Like I just feel like the latter part of the class just there's so many good things that we kind of covered at the end.
Right. I also would say listening week four, that kind of
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
hard to like just learning all the different styles of listening and how that can play effect into conflict as well.
Hmm.
Conflict styles. That was all week.
Hmm.
I feel like the family dynamics was pretty big for me too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just so relevant for all of us, even if we don't if we
Yeah.
don't center it, I don't think we can kind of get away from it.
That week five? No.
Let's double check.
Okay. No. I think that might have
I
been
can't,
with listening.
I
Maybe that
can't really see without opening up every single page in the module.
right.
There's a good amount of discussion about like anger and like injury with that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the video, the Mr. Rogers video is really good in that week.
In the anger one.
Yeah, for week five.
I mean, I think I would say like the negotiation one too. I mean, for me at least, just because there was again a lot of good nuggets and kind of like emotional regulation and just like different steps that I think are applicable to my work, but also just again, I think that's just applicable to a lot of different things. As evidence in the Godfather video, I think that's
What video did you say? Uh,
it was the three steps.
three steps. What was the one that you just mentioned about anger, Chris?
Let me go back to it.
It is called Three Steps to Getting What You Want in Negotiation. That's week 7, I think.
Okay, I'm gonna add the anger. I really liked the iceberg.
Oh, the
Yeah,
anger iceberg.
you just do that.
Mm.
So, but I could put the I could add in the video as well. You said Fred Rogers, was that what the one?
Mr. Rogers. It's
Mr.
the what do you do with the mad that you feel?
I'm just going to
I
include.
think that was the one I'm remembering, but
Okay, and then I think um negotiation is what you were talking about, G.
Hmm.
Okay.
It was like Ruchi, I think was her name. The three steps to getting what you want or need. I think want.
And what week was that?
That was 7. That was 7. Uno más.
And that's going to be the negotiation.
Oh, okay.
Three
All right, cool.
steps to what you want.
3 steps to getting what you want in a negotiation.
Oh, yeah, I think I,
Yeah, you talked about that one too.
okay. That was week 7. Perfect. Alrighty. There is 10. Good job.
Sweet.
All right. I don't know if it's Chris or G for this one.
I think it's me. Um, discuss the team meeting assignments. In this final meeting, as we wrap up the term, how did the assignment impact your online learning experience? How can this assignment inform us about maintaining social connections and digital formats? I think it helped a lot. It made the class a lot more personable. It allowed for me to review the content over again, as we prepare for the meetings. I think it's good. On like a super fundamental way. I mean, we all had to agree on, norms and budgeting for the meeting and everything else. So I think there's a lot to take away from it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say like it made it feel more personal, like you said, but also I appreciated like the fact that we had to hold each other accountable in the sense of having to go through and review and really make sure we knew what we were gonna discuss and how we were gonna go about it. Um, I would also say it would hold us accountable in the sense of her responding to the videos as well and kind of showing us what we needed to work on, what more we needed to do. So that was nice. And then like the social connections, having to text and communicate when we were going to meet and then making the norms to like how we were going to meet was really nice to kind of experience and go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything that just like +1 to everything you both said. I mentioned this a bunch already, but I work remotely. I'm in this like box for, 45 hours a week for just my work. So it is a lot to kind of to do. And, this year for the most part and being my first, year in the program, most of it's like just asynchronous stuff. It brings a really important element to just like interaction and, looking and hearing the content from other people's perspectives and hearing more like about how they relate to the content that we're going over. So like, you know, I thought it was really like a really solid exercise in general. And then um, it does also, I mean, this isn't kind of one of the questions necessarily, but um, it does make me think about just like the larger impact of um, isolation that we experience. And that, in this like kind of post-COVID world, even when we do have lots of people like back at work, there's still like so many of us that aren't, and we're still, I don't know, I just think it's important to prioritize social connections. And so I appreciate it in this space as well. So good job, Professor.
Hmm.
So, okay, so I think that then there's no need to plan, okay, for the next ticket. Um, I think it's the exit ticket then, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah. Okay, so I do have, I wrote it down. I feel like I feel silly because it's kind of the same thing as 16, but I'll say it anyways and maybe I can adjust it. But it's like what is the biggest shift? Like what is the biggest shift for you in how you will like moving forward approach like conflict after taking this course?
Mm, I would say I'm probably gonna be more aware of my feelings because feel like a big gist I got from his class is you can only really be able to work through conflict as long as you know what you want and where your boundaries are, and kind of more so it's more beneficial to look within than only to look without. So,
Oh, nice. How about you, Chris?
I guess just like my preconceived notion in the beginning was just like conflict is always adversarial in every way, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and kind of just looking at it, like separating it from the individual, also depending on the context, obviously, but uh, just looking at it more of like a problem to solve as opposed to just it being this immobile, like really hard barrier, I guess, or difficult barrier. Um, and I think just how I'll approach it is different because I'll try to like realize that my perception of it is not necessarily like the the correct perception or like the only perception.
Hmm.
right.
I mean, there's so many things, but I think if I'm gonna kind of boil it down to, it doesn't have to be one thing, but it is just the like idea that you know, there's lots of different layers to things, right? Like I feel like there's no one best way to kind of go into or to approach conflict. Like they're all kind of useful in different places. The idea of I think was helpful for me is like having these clear definitions of like forgiveness and reconciliation and repair. Um, and so all of these different and like I like face work and all the different layers there. I think all of that stuff for me is like internally kind of prompting me just to ask better questions and maybe not even ask better questions of other people, although that I think too, but just like ask better questions about what's really happening. So even though we didn't talk about it explicitly, I think it kind of is boiled down to just curiosity, you know, and asking better questions about all these different things that there's complexity to understand the different perspectives that can be at play. But yeah, solid. I for sure am a fan of the latter part of the class versus I mean, it was all good, but just I think some good engagement from me around the latter part in terms of really kind of pushing me.
I'm glad. I really appreciate everything that we were able to do too as a group and working through that without any problems. And I feel like we all put in a good portion, and that was nice to just be able to rely on you guys too. You guys were extremely reliable. So,
It's always helpful.
mm.
Cool. Um, well, just to wrap up, I don't know if you noticed at the beginning of the assignment, but she said like if you require additional time beyond the due date, that seems like a different note, um, and a different expectation than what she's normally had around. Do you see that at the beginning of the of this assignment? It says, no, if you require additional time beyond the due date, please notify me. There's room for flexibility to make sure everyone is included in the final meeting. I mean, she's typically had a larger window for these, so I was not sure if that was a note because we're at the end of the term, you
I
know?
think so. I
But
think she like will default to the syllabus with it. I think because I got a similar thing from another professor that like if you can't hit the due date of like the 29th, make sure that uh we know, blah blah blah. So I think that that's what it is. I think it's like
Well,
an end of term.
needless to say, I did email her just to let her know that we were doing it today. So, and that we would be turning it in like later this week. I got several things I kind of gotta get done. But I will make sure to get this turned in no later than Friday. I'll send you a text just like I did last time. Thank you, Delaney, for putting all this stuff in our text thread.
Yeah.
So send
Thank you
that.
for sending that email.
Yeah. Um, and then I gotta go because I'm starving. So,
Right?
all
Good one.
right. It was nice to meet you all and spend
Thank
some
you.
time. Good luck with everything.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.